It's Saturday, November 15th, 2025, and this is the Daily Brief. So Pokrovsk still holds, and we're going to look at why and what's going on and get some insight into what's going on the battlefield. Before we get to that, though, let's look at this from yesterday. So researchers analyzed the satellite imagery of the Novorossiysk air defense site prior to the recent Neptune strike. That was not last night, but the night before. They counted 7 S-400 launchers, likely within the blast zone. Footage shows clear explosions and secondary detonation, now waiting on post-strike imagery to assess the damage. We'll find out more about this over time, but yeah, they took out the air defense and then they took out the oil terminal. Ukraine attack halts oil exports from Russia's Novo, affecting 2% of global supply, according to sources. This is in Reuters. So this was a big hit yesterday. Not last night again, but the night before. Ryazan's oil refinery was hit again overnight. That's last night. Locals heard over 10 explosions and a large fire broke out near the site. This refinery is one of Russia's top 5 key fuel supplier for several regions. However, they've been hit again and again and again. It's not like, okay, it's responsible for 5% of the country's overall capacity, but this is the 4th strike there. Each time they chip away, maybe 1% this time, 0.5% the next time, another 1%. So August 2nd, September 5th, October 23rd, November 15th, but they just keep chipping away at it. Ryazan refinery has an annual capacity of 17 million tons of oil. Okay, several Telegram channels were reporting a fire near Voronezh, Russia, near the Chemical Automatics Design Bureau, where engines for Iskander missiles and others rockets are produced. Meanwhile, the city's channels are mentioning nothing about a fire. One reports only about a glow in the sky. Okay, so a glow in the sky, that's like a careless cigarette, I guess. There's no official information about what's happening in Voronezh, but we'll find out in a day or so. Okay, other news, 6,500 kilometers from the border of Ukraine on Russian territory, Ukraine's military intelligence, the GRU, carried out a special operation. Ukrainian saboteur agents blew up railway tracks near the settlement of Sosnovka and the Trans-Siberian Highway. Russia uses this railway line to supply weapons to combat materials from North Korea. So this is a Trans-Siberian Highway. And if you scroll out to about here, I mean, it wasn't that hard to place an explosive charge on a railway track. And that's what was going on here. So again, more of these are going to keep coming. Size is Russia's enemy, not its friend, when we're talking about these kinds of events. Okay, Ukraine also launched its first coordinated missile campaign against Russia's power grid. Now, this is talking about what's been happening, not just what happened last night. Shifting from months of drone warfare to precision strikes that destroyed major thermal power plants in Voronezh and Oriel. Oriel was just a few days back. 3 missiles struck Voronezh thermal power plant, demolishing newly built 2019 boiler block and leaving over 1,000 industrial users offline, including the critical Voronezh chemical plant. In Oriel, strikes destroyed sections of a plant that powered 40% of the region's electricity, 65% of the city's central heating. Ukraine can now operate a 2-layer strategy, and I think this is what we'll see more of going forward: missiles for destruction and drones for ongoing disruption. The Russians do this too to Ukraine. They have drones and missiles, and the drones are trying to distract from where the missiles are going to be going toward, or drawing away attention to that. This is a little bit more from this article. Within weeks, Ukraine has fused missiles and drones into a 2-layer strategy: missiles for destruction, drones for disruption. Energy output is collapsing, not from one catastrophic event, but from hundreds of overlapping failures. Analysts estimate that Ukraine strikes have crippled a quarter of Russia's generating capacity. That's a very high number. That might just be a regional thing rather than overall, but that's, I mean, it's hard to believe that kind of high number. But yeah, I mean, this is what the plan is. It's the same kind of plan that's going to the economy, right? It's hundreds of little catastrophic events cascading one on top of another, that, as I showed you with the economics video yesterday. Okay, Russians making angry videos about their country murdering Ukrainians? No, not that. Russians are making super angry videos about mobile traffic jamming during air raids. They don't like that they're not able to, search the internet while there's air raids on. So, okay, Ukraine's air defense intercepted 93 targets overnight. Russia launched 3 Kh-47M2 Kinzhal missiles and 135 attack drones. 2 Kinzhals and 91 drones were shot down. Some hits and debris were recorded at 17 locations. That's what happened overnight from the Russian side. So Russia has shifted its strategy to energy T. Again, when I say T, what I mean. Tactics in Ukraine. Air defense is struggling to keep the grid intact. Now, there's a reason for that. There's just not enough air defense, and they have to protect a pretty large grid. Size of the state of Texas, especially frontline and border areas in the east, is what the Russians are attacking. They're focusing their attention now instead of doing it the way that they did it before. Okay, so power plants, substations, hydro facilities, gas infrastructure are once again under fire, but this time the tactics changed. Again, they're focusing on taking out particular layers, particularly closer to the front line and border areas near the east. The attacks have also become harder to stop. Russia now uses swarms of Shahed drones and Iskander-M ballistic missiles, which are extremely difficult to intercept. I think you need Patriots to take out one of those Iskander-M ballistic missiles. I don't know what else can knock it down. A few direct hits on a thermal power plant's machine hull can effectively wipe it out. Scheduled blackouts in Ukraine may remain the norm until spring of 2022. So that's what we're looking at. That's what the Russians are trying to accomplish here. This was Dnipro last night. The whole world watches. Russia ruin Ukraine, killing Ukrainians while waging a genocidal war. I just want you to see what the Russians are trying to accomplish here. And just in this little video clip, what this woman's going through, right? She's in her apartment. She's not a combatant. This should be the headline here. This should be, if you just were to capture 10 seconds, that's what the war is. Okay. 1,000 Russians off the battlefield day over day, 6 tanks, 19 armored combat vehicles, and then you had 90 vehicles and fuel tanks last night. 5th highest number of engagements. I'm going to show you in Pokrovsk. I don't think I've ever seen the number this high in Pokrovsk in just a moment. Notable equipment losses, including 8th highest drone losses last night. Okay, cross direction in Donetsk region, the Russians attacked Ukrainian position 102 times. I've seen it over 100 before, but I'm not exactly sure how high. I mean, this is in the upper echelon of the number of attacks. I think I've seen it as high as 120, but it's crazy. Okay, the Russian military command appears to be prioritizing the seizure of Pokrovsk over efforts to close wider Ukrainian pocket in the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd area. So what's interesting about this is how the Russians are going about doing what they're doing in Pokrovsk. Pokrovsk is still holding. They're still there, but the way that they went about it, they tried this, it didn't work. They tried that, it didn't work. And finally, they found something that actually worked. Here's what worked. Russian advances in Pokrovsk resulted not from sudden breakthrough, they're not mobile. It's really almost trench warfare kind of they really can't take much ground, but rather from months of dedicated battlefield shaping. Russian forces were able to make significant advances in and around Pokrovsk only recently after successfully achieving partial battlefield air interdiction efforts over the spring and summer of 2025. That means using drones to get hit behind enemy lines, which degraded Ukrainian ground lines of communication, enabled Russian infiltration missions, and subsequently undermined Ukraine's ability to sustain tactical defenses. So you can cut off the road supplies with the drones, and you can keep them from being able to communicate properly and that sort of thing. New Russian technological and tactical adaptations and force structure changes allowed Russian forces to conduct a months-long BAI infiltration campaign. The recent Russian advances in and around Pokrovsk would not have been possible, according to the ISW, would not have been possible, however, without the commitment of significant amounts of manpower and other traditional material in this direction at the expense of other efforts. So they're overly using the forces, their human meat waves, just sending people in. Like, they'll take a little ground and get killed, take a little ground and get killed, take a little ground and get killed. And they're highly prioritizing Pokrovsk over other areas on the battlefield. Ukrainian forces have long relied on drone superiority to offset chronic and important shortages in material, and that has worked, but especially in personnel, right? They're lower on numbers, and they know that, so they need to fight differently. The new Russian approach identified and attacked this critical Ukrainian offset, thereby facilitating more rapid and significant advances. What does that mean? That means like the drone operator, the Russian drone operators would go after Ukrainian drone operators rather than other Ukrainians on the battlefield. Ukrainian forces are holding, but the situation has worsened since July due to mounting offensive pressure, according to Michael Kaufman. Russian unrecoverable casualties, 25,000, have been inching upwards. 25,000 or more, has been per month, has been inching upwards. Their monthly recruitment rate of 30 to 35, such as that in 2025, they had to focus on loss replacement as opposed to force expansion. So they're not really, like, they're adding to their numbers, but they're just replenishing. They're not really building larger. Not by much, at least. The quality keeps going down. Desertion has also gone up within the Russian ranks. So that's where the Russians are here. The Russian breakthrough, however, in Novopolivka is no joke. It's a real thing, and it's because of the fog. Taking advantage of the bad weather and the growing systemic problems in our defense, the enemy several times entered the populated area with equipment and deployed paratroopers. Overall, the situation is critical. This is from Sergei Sternenko. He's no joke. He's like huge fundraiser in Ukraine. He focuses very heavily on the war. I believe what he has to say. Again, using heavy fog as cover, Russian forces set up pontoon crossing between Yalta and Dachny, moving around 10 vehicles across. Although detected late, Ukraine's 42nd Mechanized Brigade quickly struck back with drones, taking out 2 tanks, 5 armored vehicles, and personnel. So again, heavy fog, that's been the bane of their existence. Here's the use of drones in urban warfare. Just look at some of these images. This is what drone operators are able to do, and it's tricky working in close quarters, but they're able to identify, like, this guy, well, yeah. And this is what the drone operators are able to do, and this is why the battlefield has changed so much. Russian soldier with mental disability says that he was imprisoned in an open-air pit for 54 days to force him to join a stormtrooper squad. This highlights the Russian army's increasing use of men with disabling mental conditions as frontline troops. This isn't the first video. I've seen half dozen of these kind of things so far. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's bad. Okay, Russia recruited over 1,400 mercenaries from 36 countries in Africa to fight and die in Ukraine. Now, this journalist says, I met some of the lucky few who survive and end up as POWs, but Russia doesn't want them back, and their impoverished home countries don't want them either. So they're imprisoned indefinitely. Like, they're not sure what to do with them exactly. And this is the way that the war is going. All right, last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. This is a BBC correspondent, chief correspondent Jeremy Bowen, pretending to be under Russian attack when an elderly Ukrainian lady walking her dog stops to make sure that he's okay. Okay, so now he might actually be fearful. Maybe he heard something, and maybe she's just not fearful about it because, you know, like I lived in an area of the United States where we have hurricanes fairly regularly for most of my life, and you know, we're just kind of like, okay, you know, stocking up at the store, happy hurricane, see you in a couple days. So maybe that's what's going on, or maybe it's extra. I just don't know. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Thank you, my friends, for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. Tell me what you thought about what you saw here in the comments below. I try to read as many as I can. Thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.